Someone in the comments asked me what I was doing to get Paquita ready to cross the Atlantic. Let's get into it. They say if you wait until the boat is ready, you'll never go. And I kind of believe that's true. Seems as though if I have 10 things on the list of things to do, by the time I get to around 7 or 8, I've developed 4 or 5 more things that have broken or pop up in my mind. Anyway, as far as getting the boat ready to cross the Atlantic or do the Atlantic circuit or eventually head off to the South Pacific, what kind of preparations have I made? Well, to be honest, it kind of goes back to buying the boat. Maybe you guys have seen in other videos that I've said that if I was just content with doing coastal cruising, I could have saved myself about 1/3 of the money I spent on Paquita by buying a different boat, and it probably would have been more comfortable and had more room to party and be basically a floating camper. But I wanted a boat to cross oceans, so as far as the preparation goes, yes, I actually the choice of the boat that I got might not be right for you, but it certainly has been right for me, and I've been very happy with Paquita. But there's been a whole bunch of things that I've done along the way, and this has been, you know, it's always been the end goal to cross oceans, but the going and doing, you know, as we get closer and closer, I actually am 6 days away. I've got 6 more days. Time of filming this, I get 6 more days here at work, and then I don't have a paycheck anymore, and Chrysalida and I got to sail from Florida up to New England and then wait for the weather window to go across. So these are some of the things that I've done. Most of them concern safety, but before we get to safety, I think it's important to talk about some of the other things that we've done too to prepare the boat. When I received the boat, it had 4 AGM house batteries with a total of about it had a little bit more than 400, probably 500 amp hours, but by the time I got it, they were relatively used, so maybe 400, and of that 50% you could use, so that would be 200 amp hours of power that were in there. And I ultimately changed that to lithium. You can see videos for that. Everything I'm talking about I should have videos somewhere about, and if you want to see more, obviously write something in the comments. I'll either get back to you or make a video about it. But I originally went to 900 amp hours of lithium, and then before a year was up, because I changed my inverter, I went to I went and changed everything on the electrical side to Victron, so everything's Victron. I noticed that where I had my Victron inverter charger, when the generator would be on and it would be charging, it would produce a lot of heat, and it was tucked underneath the settee. So I pulled it out, and in doing that, I gave myself some more room, and I said, you know what, now's the time before they say that a rule of thumb is that you can usually add another lithium battery to your bank if you do the same size and model of the same batteries, but you got to do it within about a year. And so I did that, and so now we have 1200 amp hours of lithium. I have it dumbed down so that I only use everything will shut off at when it gets down to 20%. So of that 80%, we have that. So what I'm trying to say is, in preparation for a long passage, I've dramatically increased the storage for the electricity. I've also increased the solar. I think the boat used to have about 200 watts of solar on it. We've got it up to 1800 watts of solar, including 1100 watts of bifacial solar. Actually, that's 1300 watts, but the other one doesn't get much on the bifacial because I have it up against the bimini. But anyway, so something that I've learned along the way, sometimes as you prepare for something like going across the Atlantic, you start making, you have these wonderful dreams that you're going to do this and you're going to do that, and then when you do them, when you implement them, what worked on paper doesn't exactly work the same way in practice. And although I have been very familiar with solar, dating back almost all my life when I grew up on Monhegan, an island up in Maine. We didn't have any electricity, and so back then I remember, my dad and I put a 12-volt system in our house just for lights because we normally had kerosene lights in there. But anyway, as things got better, I've done a bunch of solar systems between in the middle of the country and in the east coast of the country and down in Puerto Rico, and usually you can figure out how much solar you can expect from what the STC, or the standard test control of what the panels are supposed to put out, and you can go on NOAA's website, and they'll actually tell you what you should expect for how much solar radiation you can get for your area in a given month or even year, averaged out. And so I brought those numbers onto the sailboat, and that was a big mistake. That does not happen that way. Even with the bifacial stuff, I thought I was going to get a lot more from this bifacial than I do, meaning that the water, the way I have my bifacial panels, they're on the solar arch, and they hang out over the transom, so that as the sun that doesn't hit the panels hits the water, it reflects back up, and you get something out of it, but you don't get much. But basically, for just this is not written anywhere. This is just Tim's rule of thumb. If you're putting solar on your boat and you want to know what to do, what you can expect, I'm thinking that you can. Generally speaking, I get about half of what they say I can get. For instance, I have a theoretical 1800 watts of solar, but because the boat is never exactly at the right angle, and because it moves a little bit, and because there's different shading and there's salt on the panels and all that sort of stuff, when I get 11 or 1200 watts, there have been times I've gotten 1500 watts out of the array, but if I can get half of what I'm rated at, I'm pretty happy with that. And I don't mean just for oh look, it's putting out a lot. No, over a period of time, that's really good. But even so, when I'm sailing and I'm not using the engine, and we're going, but everything's on, Paquita has a lot of power requirements. We've talked about this before, from 2 fridge freezers and Starlink running 24 hours a day. I leave my inverter on, and it's always charging all the laptop. I have a big Garmin suite, electric autopilot. So I average them about 200 to 250 watts that Paquita's using all the time. And so this is part of one of the reasons why I wanted to have a larger battery system, was that while we're sailing, the boat's usually heeled over, and you're going to think I'm making this up, and anyone that sails a lot and has solar will probably agree with me. I don't care which way the wind is blowing, the solar panels will usually be tilted exactly opposite of where they would make the most sun. So in other words, the sun's coming this way, you would think that you would be heeled over and you'd be like this, and line the panels up better. Never works that way. It always goes the other way. So anyway, my 2 biggest panels are 550s and 550 watts apiece. And on a good day, clear weather, I can usually make about 2 kW or 2,000 watts out of those. So that's about that 4 times, which is really, really good. So I wouldn't count on that. Seems like when I'm sailing, for the whole 1800 watts, I'll have better numbers when I cross the Atlantic, especially because the Azorian High and all that sort of stuff. But I'm thinking if I can make about 5 kW a day, that's going to help me out quite a bit. It's not going to, while I'm underway and we're going, and you make a lot, I tend to make a lot more power at anchor than I do when I'm underway, because when I'm underway the sails are up and the boat's heeled over and all that sort of stuff. Not only that, usually when we're underway it's not always a perfect sunny day, because the wind's usually blowing and there's usually cloud cover. Anyway, enough about that. You guys don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about the other stuff. So getting the boat ready, power, I also got our high output alternator, and it's a 170 amp alternator, and we've got it dialed back down to about 120 amps just to keep it going a little longer. And that's so that when we do use it, we continue to charge it. As you guys know, with the good thing about lithium is that you can dump a whole bunch of power in there when you have the opportunity. So strike while the iron's hot. And then also getting the boat ready. Years ago, the boat, before I bought it, had a generator, but it was a Fisher Panda, and it went the way of what I understand many Fisher Pandas do. It ended up dying on the previous owner, and he had it removed down in the island somewhere and never changed it. So when I got the boat, I was never going to put a generator in it. I figured, you know what, I'm going to really concentrate on a robust electrical system, and I don't need a generator. And my brother really talked me into it. He goes, Tim, it's not always about you. You're going to sell the boat sometime, so just because you can do power management and do your thing, when you go to sell the boat, somebody else is going to want a generator on there. And the hard part about putting a generator in is, you know, putting in the through hulls, putting in the exhaust, running the fuel and return lines, you know, and then obviously all the electrical stuff. All of that had already been done, so it made a lot of sense for me. And so instead of getting a cheap generator and throwing it in there, here in our world, many of our barges use Northern Lights generators, and they have a great reputation, other than the reputation of them being extremely expensive. So I did get a little 3-cylinder, naturally aspirated Northern Lights 5 kW generator, and so I got that and I put it in, and you know what? I spent a lot of money doing that. Years later, I am so happy. That thing just runs. You can hardly hear it. It just sips fuel, and it just runs and runs and runs, and the thing is phenomenal. So that's something that I did to get ready for it.
Hang on a second, I got to stop this. I got carried away and forgot where I was going. So anyway, something that you might want to think about is that because North America is usually, 120 volts and 60 hertz or 60 cycles, when you go over to Europe, it's usually 230 and 50 cycles. So that's going to be an issue. You can't just plug in. Now they make some big converters, and they do all big Atlas power converters, and changing the voltage isn't hard. Changing the frequency can be very difficult, and I've opted to go a different way, and it's not just me. Many people do this, but to let you know, because I built a robust electrical system, it works very well. And all I did was I bought a 100 amp 12 volt Victron smart charger, and that will go to its own separate cord that will be able to fit the European marinas. In fact, it'll take anything from like 85 volts up to 300 volts, and from like 46 hertz up to like 70 hertz. Does whatever it is, it doesn't matter, and it makes it so that it charges your battery, so that while this happens, it's charging the main bank, and then the inverter runs off of the main bank and makes 120, 60 hertz. And so that's how I'm getting away with the power thing. So just figured I'd let you know. If you didn't know that secret, it works pretty well.
There's some other things that I've done as far as changing the sails or upgrading the sails, putting the welded aluminum arch on the back, getting a new dinghy. All this stuff is all stuff that I was, because we had in mind that we were going to be doing this Atlantic crossing. Something that I've just recently done. Oh, well, I should get back to this. My friend Courtney from Cape Ann Towing down in Fort Lauderdale, he and I grew up together, and he bought a boat, and it had an older water maker on it, and he didn't want it. He goes, "Do you want this?" I said, "Sure." So I took it, and it was an old Spectra, and it turned out that I started plumbing the boat for it, and it turned out that it was such an old unit that getting replacement parts for it might be an issue. And apparently when you buy a water maker, there's kind of two schools of thought. You can get something that uses a lot of power and has a high output, or you can use something, you can use another system that uses very little bit of power, but the output is very small as well. So it's one way or the other. Because I had so much power, both AC and DC, I figured that if I were ever to buy a water maker, which I didn't really need right away because we hold 250 gallons of water anyway, but if I were going to do that, I would probably go for the high output and high load. Anyway, when one's given to you for free, you go with that. And so that's what I did. And when I went to go use it and had little problems with it, I was in Fort Lauderdale, and there's a an amazing service network down there that takes care of Spectra water makers, and they said that they can't, that they could probably get it going for me, but that I really need to start thinking about being in weird places in the world where it's never going to, when these things fail, how am I going to deal with this? So that made a lot of sense to me. And it also made a lot of sense to me too that had I gone with a high pressure, high output water maker, the odds of something breaking are a lot more than low pressure, low output, and low current draw. So it's a simpler system is what we end up with. Anyway, the company that I was dealing with said, "Look, your thing, we can get it going, but we can't guarantee you. But what you can do is we can give you a refurbished one that's all set, and it had all the updates done to it and all that." And they gave it to me at a wonderful price, and I was able to put 2 pumps in. And so in other words, 1 pump should be able to do 8 gallons per hour, and 2 pumps should be able to do around 15 or something like that. And so we put all that in, and that's working. I have a little bit of a leak, but that's not their problem. That's just something I have to deal with before I leave when I get back to the boat. And it's just it's a Teflon tape and O-ring situation. So not a big deal, but just kind of before I say that thing's completely done, I want that done. I want to fix that. Anyway, so getting water. Oh, here's the chief.
You good?
So getting water, or getting a water maker was another thing that I did. And you say, well, why is that part of? Well, obviously, if you cross an ocean, you're going to need water. And if we're looking at 14 days or more to the Azores, 250 gallons of water for 4 people is plenty for that. But when we get to the Mediterranean, after we get from the Azores, we'll go into Gibraltar and go into the Mediterranean, and it'll be when everyone else is doing their thing there. And they say that the odds of us being able to get to a marina are very low, and the odds of us to get to a marina just to get water and then leave, first of all, I don't want to be that guy. Second of all, they don't want me to do that. And third, that might not even be I might not even be able to do that. And before I had my water maker working, we would go back and forth to Georgetown with 5-gallon water bags filling the boat up, and that gets old really fast. So since I've got the water maker and the water maker's producing water, and if you've ever had a saltwater head, you'll know that, I don't mean to be gross here, but when a saltwater head will pull water from the outside in and help you flush the toilet. And when salt water and your urine combine, maybe some of you chemists out there can explain this a little better than I can, but basically you get a whole bunch of calcification inside all of your lines. It's very common for people to say, you know what, I had a toilet and it flushed wonderfully for 5 years, and now it gets plugged up all the time. Or someone will say, yeah, I don't have a problem with my head, it works fine. Yeah, it works fine now because the pipes are like this. As time goes by, they get smaller, the inside diameter gets smaller and smaller and smaller. probably like my arteries. Anyway, and as they get smaller, it's harder and harder to push things through there. So that's a big issue, and that's something that I've been fighting with. Not to mention the smell of the head. A lot of people, I'm sure everyone watching this knows this, but when you go on a boat and there's a funky head smell in there, a lot of people think it's from the poop and the stuff that's in the toilet. It literally is from the stuff that's in the toilet, but not from the human part. It's actually the salt water. When salt water, because of the microorganisms that are in there, when it becomes still and it's not moving anymore, the oxygen is depleted out of there by the microorganisms that are in there, and as they break down, they produce hydrogen sulfide, which gives that kind of a rotten egg smell. And so a lot of people will think, oh, you got a stinky head, you need to clean out your holding tank, you need to do this, you need to do that. No, man, the problem is that this is seawater that's doing that. You don't need to have any poop in the system to make it smell like really bad poop. So a freshwater head removes all that. And I don't mean it removes it, it keeps that from happening. So now that we still have 250 gallons of water, we have a way to make water all the time, and it doesn't require much power. And so all that's wonderful. And I think that if you have a water maker, you really shouldn't use it unless you use it all the time. You'd otherwise have to pickle it and that sort of thing. But the more you use a water maker, the better it works. And it's good for it to use it quite often. So I put a freshwater conversion in my aft head, and I removed the forward head out and put a Raritan Elegance electric head, macerating head that's all freshwater as well. And I'm really excited because Chrysalida hasn't seen it yet. I think she's going to be really, really happy with that. So I'm kind of really excited about that. So that's another thing that I did to upgrade so that we won't have an issue when we're in the Mediterranean and people are fighting to get water. We won't be one of those, hopefully, if everything works that well. And I just bought a case of 25 5-micron filters and a case of 25 20-micron filters. So I should have a whole bunch of filters in place so that we can do all that. And I also have something, you don't need to know about that, but I have a thing that it's called a Z-ion pre-filter, so that when you flush it, once you start making water, you're supposed to flush it or make water again every 3 to 5 days. And if you use a Z-ion thing, it electrically puts something into the filter membrane, and you're supposed to be able to not have to flush it or run it for 30 days. So I have that as well. Anyway, all that's great. Okay, so those are some of the fun things that I've added. I've had Starlink, and that's, one thing that, well, I guess it has to do a little bit with safety. I used to have, through PredictWind, I got Iridium Go with an external antenna. And when we went to Puerto Rico, and we came back from Puerto Rico, and went up and down the coast, when we'd be way offshore, it was a way to not only get grid files for the weather, but it was also a way to communicate. People could track where we are, that our loved ones and you guys could see where we were. But you could also email people and that sort of thing. So that was all good. But then Starlink came along, and it kind of blew all that right out of the water. So I made a mistake. I actually reached out into our Owners Association group online, and I said, does anyone want this? And somebody said, yes, I would like it. So I sent it off to them. And after I did so, they said that they were going to keep it as a spare. And that didn't really register with me because I'm not the brightest bulb in the circuit. Anyway, now that I'm getting ready to go across the Atlantic, I don't like a single point of failure. And I think that communications is something that's extremely important to me, especially going to some place like crossing an ocean where I'll be wanting to talk to the weather router, and I want people to be able to follow along to see where we're at and all that sort of stuff. So Starlink is definitely the right thing for that. That's great. Unfortunately, that's going to come with a cost where I can't just use my regular Roam $165 deal. I have to do the $250 deal, and after 50 gigs it drops out. You say, oh, 50 gigs is a lot. Yeah, well, every time I've ever used that $250 deal, everything on the boat starts doing a update for software. And it's like, I remember Rick and Chrysalida and I, when we were coming down from New England down to Florida last time, we burned through 50 gigs before we even got offshore. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I'll have to deal with that later. But if Starlink were to go down, if there was a problem, and I don't mean that Starlink's going to go down, I don't expect that to happen, I'm just saying stuff happens. If something happened and I'm in the middle of the Atlantic, sure, Columbus did that, but a lot of other people used to die back then too, or get unnecessarily beat up. In other words, if the weather router tells me to turn a little bit further north or come a little bit south, I'll do whatever the weather router tells me to do, but I need communication to do that. So I need a secondary thing. I had thought that my new phone has this feature, which many of yours do, where you can actually, it can go and you can send and receive messages for emergencies through satellites. But be careful with that. I thought that was a thing. I was like, sweet, if I ever have a problem with my Starlink, I'll be able to use my phone on this, just stand outside, get a signal. All that sounded like a great idea to me. But when I went out, being here working on the tugboats, as we get further and further offshore, I get 2 messages on my phone all the time. One will say that my automatic auto accident thing shuts off. So in other words, if I'm in an accident, my phone figures that out and dials 911 for me automatically, apparently. I don't know. Haven't been in an accident. So. But when we're offshore, it tells me that's not working. And it also tells me your SOS, your satellite SOS is not working. And then as we get close to shore again, it'll say, yes, it's now working again. So any of you that are counting on that, there's no for me that I don't think that's something that we should be able to count on. At least not yet. I know that Starlink has a thing that says that there's direct to phone to Starlink, that there are some phones that can do that. I'm just saying that most people with Apple and Android, newer Apple and Android phones have this SOS function that they can do, but I don't think it works more than 12 miles offshore, so just be aware of that. So, I'll be taking my friend Chris's InReach with us, Garmin InReach. And it's just a texting thing, but like I said, texting will help me if we lose everything, and I'll be able to tell somebody, yeah, we're all right, we're going to keep going this way, this is where we're at. And somebody can, somebody that I would send this to would send me back weather and say, okay, the weather looks good, you're going to have a blow tomorrow, but it's going to get better the next day, that sort of stuff. So that's part of the preparation that I've done. All right, so that's kind of getting into safety. Let's talk about some safety. One of the things that I did do is the boat has a 6-person offshore Viking life raft, and it had timed out a year or 2 ago, and I had read somewhere that if you don't immediately get it recertified, that sometimes the packing place will say, yeah, it's been out of date for so long, I'm not going to pack it anymore. Well, when I went and talked to Viking, they said they don't care if it's been in date or out of date. They're going to inflate the thing, and if it passes the test, it passes the test. If it doesn't pass the test, it doesn't pass the test. So in other words, about 2 years ago, as I'm going up and down the coast, I'm not really in a big place where a life raft is that important if you're doing coastal cruising. It's not like you're going to be out in the middle of the ocean. So that wasn't a big deal for me. And had I got the life raft recertified then, and 3 years later, it would time out. And so by now I'd be looking at the end of it. Anyway, I went and got it, and just so you guys know, a 6-man offshore Viking life raft to get it recertified was $1,700 and change, almost $1,800 to get that done. And it kills me because I don't think we're going to use it. But it's kind of like insurance or wearing a seatbelt. You don't need it until you need it. So you got to get it done. So I did that. While I did that, I did something just because of my roots here as a professional mariner. The tugboats, when they go down like rocks. And so all of our EPIRBs and life rafts and all that stuff are all self-deploying with a hydrostatic release. And my life raft never had a hydrostatic release in it, and I think probably for good reason, because I got a feeling that if and when our boats ever sunk, I mean, it's a full keel. It's not like the keel's going to snap off, and the keel bolts will fail and there'll be a hole and it'll drop right out. Even if the rudder, I mean, it's a protected rudder, but even if the rudder got, if an orca came and broke the rudder out of there, we'd have water coming in, but it would probably take 2 or 3 hours for the boat to sink. And in that time, you could launch a life raft. Having said that, you know what? For $100, it just makes me feel better, and I feel like I'm being more responsible for the people that I'm taking with me to do the crossing. I put a hydrostatic release on there, and that's a good thing. And look, if you get one, make sure you do it right, because that's something that every tugboat, and I'd like to say that all professional mariners are better than this, but everywhere we go, you usually get what, every year on commercial stuff, so we got to replace them every year, the hydrostatic thing. Recreational, we got to do it every 3 years. Anyway, the hydrostatic release I've seen on many boats, recreational and commercial, that have been installed wrong. There's three things on it. One goes to the deck, one goes to the raft, and one goes to the painter as what they call a weak link. And I don't want to tell you how to do that. You need to, if you use a hydrostatic release, make sure you hook it up right, because you haven't. If it doesn't work, well, why did you bother doing it? So anyway, I put a hydrostatic release on it. Do I probably really need it? Probably not, but it makes me feel better, so I did that. So that was something that I did. Also for safety, what else did I do? Oh, I found something that the boat had that I never knew about. When I was digging through stuff, I found we have a great big, you've heard of people that have a series drogue. That's something that slows you down. If you're in really heavy weather, you're worried that as a wave comes behind you, you would start skating down the wave, and if the boat went left or right, in our case, 15, 18 tons of boat, if it turned like that and was going down a wave, it could theoretically roll over. So what you'd do is you'd have a line off the stern with something that drags resistance or drag, and so that it not only does it slow the boat down, but if the boat went one way or other, the pressure on the stern would keep the boat from rolling over or lessen the odds. Anyway, I found this really cool thing that it's not a series drogue, but it is a drogue. It's a great big hoop that has a series of straps through it, and pretty cool. Apparently you can even use it if you lose your rudder. I found videos online with a guy that had a 45-foot Swan or something like that in Newport, Rhode Island, and he was replacing his rudder anyway, so he left the rudder off, and he was able to maneuver through the harbor just by moving this drogue back and forth from one cleat to the other to make the boat turn on its own. Thought that was pretty cool. Once again, hope I don't use that. Before I started sailing, I had always thought, oh, we'll get one of those big parachute drogues that you put out like a sea anchor, and that will hold the bow into the waves. And then my experience has taught me that I should put all my effort in making sure that I'm not out there during that. And if I do get there, especially if I have good communication and stuff like that, before that kind of weather comes, we're talking like a hurricane here, I should have 3 to 5 days of notice that this thing's coming, and I should be able to make 100 to 180 miles a day away from it. And that's really kind of my primary thing, is to get away from everything. And then if it does happen, I think that I'll probably be going, especially because it's a cutter rig, I can put I have a tri-sail that I can put in on the mainsail, and we have the little Yankee up there that we can run. And if I had to slow the boat down, we have a way of doing that. So that's something that we've done as well. Oh, here's something. You don't realize how quickly time passes. I had bought the Spinlock offshore Volvo Ocean Series, Ocean Racing Series PDFs, the horseshoes, and I didn't realize it, but that was like 4 or 5 years ago. So it turns out their hydrostatic releases time out. They're still good, but they time out at the end of 25. So I had to buy all new of those, and those are, about almost $100 a piece. So I had to get 3 new of those, and so that's it. And then Runa's bringing his own, and then I had to go and it seems like I could have sworn I just got all new flares and stuff from just last year, but look, as I go and I look at the expiration date, I realize, no, that was like 2 or 3 years ago that I did that. So I got all new flares. We keep a whole bunch. Now look, if you have old rockets, especially, I keep a lot of rockets that are expired from the tugboat on there, and those are those great big long ones. They're amazing. Once again, I hope I never have to use them. And they're out of date, so they don't count as far as you getting checked by the Coast Guard. They count with me as far as if I need to get somebody's attention. I want as many of these as I can. I don't want to have 4 of them and then I'm done. But if you keep any of your old, whether we have the 12 gauge flares, we have the great big, like the little Laws rockets ones that we get from the tugboats. We also have a whole bunch of handheld flares and smoke and all that sort of stuff. When they timed out, they're still good, but you can't use them and have that part of your recognized safety equipment. So what you can do is you can legally keep them on your boat if you keep them and have them in a box and label the box and the label, or the container or whatever, as for training purposes only. So you know what? If we had time, I'd take as many as I could get into the life raft with me. Anyway, that's another story to tell you about. Let's see, what else do we do? I'm still working on my radar. I took my radar down and took it to get it checked out because I've had issues with my radar. It's a network radar, and it's not showing up on the network. And the good news is they said my radar is good. Bad news is it's still not showing up on my network, and I think I found the problem, but I won't know. And something that I didn't realize is it's very hard. You're thinking Fort Lauderdale, it's boating capital of the East Coast there, it seems. Every electronics place I deal with, none of them want to deal with sailboats because they don't want to climb mast, and maybe, I don't know, maybe sailboats haven't paid them as well as they should have. I don't know what the deal is. But anyway, it just turned out that I've had to do most of the work myself, which is probably better in the end anyway. The more that the work that you do, the more you understand your system. So I bought what I call a network hub expander. And so this is, I have the one that I have in there. Not all the lights are working, and so I'm hoping that that's the issue, that the data from the radar is not getting on the network and thus not showing up in the chart plotter. So that's something that we're working on as well. There's something else that I have another problem that I have to work on. I have the new part already waiting for me as soon as I get off the boat, so I'm excited to try that out. But something else that I've had trouble with, and I've even talked about this in other videos, is I bought PredictWind's data hub. And I gotta tell you, that thing I so want this thing to work because it seems so wonderful. And it's been nothing but a headache for me. And I gotta tell you, PredictWind, the people themselves, they're over in New Zealand, I think. When you finally get in touch with them, via email, they're really cool. They email you and they're very understanding and they help you out. But being a nice guy and being cool and all that's not as good as having everything work. And this thing has been a problem with me. I've got one problem because it's supposed to be able to do everything over Wi-Fi, and that's good because I have a Wi-Fi system, and so it wants to connect to the internet via an Ethernet connection, and my Starlink, because it's one of the first ones that came out, doesn't have that. The newer ones do. So you have to do everything through it. So that's been a whole issue. We got it working, and then the tracking wouldn't work, and then we got the tracking working, and then I'm reading down the thing. They said, look, if you're having problems, you can change this setting. I changed this setting, and the whole thing, it didn't literally blow up, but now I can't get into it. So I'm hoping that when I get back, and I've been wanting to do this while I'm at work, but if you don't have it in your hand and be able to work with it, then it doesn't make sense bothering customer service. So I'm going to hopefully get that going, and if I get that going, you guys will be able to have real time. You'll be able to see. I think you can set it to like every 5 seconds or every 5 minutes or an hour or once a day or whatever you want. I'll probably have it do it so it's like every 10 minutes it'll drop a pin and you guys will be able to see in real time where we are. But you don't just see the boat data. So you're going to see where we are position wise. You're going to see our course, our speed, our heading, our pitch, yaw, and roll. But it also gives you all the stuff from the NEMA 2000 network. So you should be able to see what the wind speed is, and all the stuff that you would have on the NEMA network. And so that's kind of cool. Not working right now. Hopefully I can get that. Once again, that won't keep. And then another big thing is that if you do that, if I get this thing working, then I have to pay another $250 that I didn't know about to Predict Wind to have them turn it onto the Pro version so that it'll produce AI polars, so that the AI polars will be a more accurate representation in Predict Wind's routing and trip planning and weather routing software. So hopefully all that work together. And then that brings us to Chris Parker. Many of you guys know Chris Parker is a world-renowned weather router here on the East Coast, and I used him going to Puerto Rico years ago. And if you remember, if any of you guys followed that trip down, we went. It was Ian was there, and my friend Ian is a 767 captain. Like I say, I've been doing that. Ian and I both have had careers where we have to read the weather and large areas of the weather for a long time. Having said that, I'm a big believer in local knowledge. That's why we have to take pilots places. And as much as we want to know everything, I think the prudent mariner is the one that realizes he doesn't know everything. And the more information he has, the better equipped he'll be to handle whatever is in front of him. So we hired Chris Parker. I think back then it was like $250, and they give you 10 blocks, and they develop a plan. They tell you when to leave, and they tell you, okay, you need to get further north this way or further south, or try to make it over there in 2 days. Call me, email me again. We'll do that sort of stuff. Anyway, that has gone up to $330, which still I think is an incredibly cheap to have a peace of mind. When I look at the weather, even here, as like I said, I spent my whole career out here at sea, but I still, every morning and every afternoon I look at that weather that comes out from NOAA, and I keep saying, God, I hope I got it right. I hope I made the right decision for the crew and the company and the customer and the environment, that we're moving a lot of hazardous stuff. Well, in this case on Paquita, I'm moving my friends and family with me, where we're going around. And so I want to be, not only do I want to live, but I also want to be comfortable. We don't have to set speed records, but we want to do the right thing. So it is so worth $330 to me to have a plan. And if Chris Parker ends up coming up with the same conclusion, or if I come up with the same conclusion that he has, that's great. I can sleep better at night knowing that it's not just me, but it's him saying this. Fun fact, when we went to Puerto Rico, at first he told us you might have to wait 10 to 14 days for these systems to go through, and then you can get underway. And we told him, we said, we can't wait that much. There's 4 of us guys, and we're leaving the East Coast, and we need to get to Puerto Rico. What can you do? He goes, well, I can put you in between 2 systems. It'll be a little bumpy, but you'll get down there. He did that, and I would have done what they call Route 66, where you go out, they say you go east until the butter melts, and then you turn south. And that was my plan. And even looking at it on Predict Wind with the weather models and all that, that's exactly how I wanted to do that. He recommended that we turn south much earlier, like 200 or 300 miles before I would have done that. And I thought that was a big mistake. But just like if you have to go to court, if you go to court and you're paying a lawyer a lot of money, don't think you know more than the lawyer. There's a reason why you have the lawyer. Running a tugboat, sometimes I think that the pilots make a mistake, and ultimately we are responsible, just like you are in court. But you hire a pilot for a reason. In this case, I hired a weather router for a reason. We did what he told us, and it was awesome. We made amazing time, and it was an amazing, it was a trip. So hopefully that will happen as well. So, and then another thing that we're also doing to prepare is that I'm not just willy-nilly going. We've done research, and the research that we've done has shown that for literally hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, people have been doing the same route that I'm doing, and if you do it in the right time frame, it doesn't guarantee that you're set. It just reduces the odds of something bad happening. So my weather window to cross the Atlantic is going to be from May to the end of June. If you go before, the early part of May, the problem is that you're still having a lot of low pressure systems come across Canada. And remember, we're going way up north and coming back down around. And if you go past June, you still might have a wonderful trip, but the problem is that you start having the unsettled weather of tropical storms or even possibly hurricanes that go underneath you. You're not going to go through a hurricane down there, at least you hope up there. You hope you don't. But the effects of that will be felt all the way across the Atlantic, and so that's something that we try to do that. So between May and June, in May or June is when we want to be. But before the end of June, we want to be inside the Mediterranean, and then we'll stay there and come out around in Christmas time, and by doing that, maybe even a little bit before Christmas, we're giving the trade winds time to stabilize and get all set, and hopefully make the cross back again the same way. So that's another thing that we've done to really kind of make things more safe. So those are some of the. Then as far as the legality of things go, it's getting insurance was a little bit more difficult than I expected, but that's been a thing with me since I've bought a boat. I've shared this many times before, but it had been, I think, 12 or 15 years since I had bought a boat before I had this boat. Not this boat, but Paquita. And when I went to go get insurance, most insurance companies saw me, because it's been over 10 years of not having a boat. They called me a new boater. And so I told them, I said, I'm a professional mariner, I'm a tugboat captain, I have over 11,000 days at sea, I have all these endorsements and all this sort of stuff. And I think it was Geico. A woman at Geico told me that I really should consider taking a weekend boating safety course, because it might help me get insurance. Anyway, I've had the same insurance company. I've been with Travelers for the last 4 years. And they've been great. They've been. Oh, you know what? When we went to Puerto Rico, I switched to another company and then came back to Travelers, because in order to leave the boat in Puerto Rico at the marina while I went to work, I had to get a company that was mostly through Lloyd's. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. So now I'm crossing, and apparently insurance in the Med is much cheaper than what us North Americans are used to paying. I think that the Caribbean is something that has cost insurance companies so much money that anything to do with the Caribbean, their prices go way up. So I didn't want to just go, some people will sail across and it's hard to get the transatlantic insurance. Some people will go uninsured until they get to the Mediterranean, buy local cheap insurance there, and then insure themselves, when they come out of there, then they go and get a plan for. I didn't want to do that. I said, you know what? I want the whole route insured, and it took I only found 2 different companies that would do that, and I went with a company that's doing that for me, and I think I'm 99% there. I had to get the boat resurveyed, and I had to provide all the stuff that you would think that you would provide. I also went and I dramatically increased my deductible, which I'm not that concerned about. I'm really insuring the boat from a total loss. I think before I had like a $2,500 deductible, and now I have a $10,000 deductible. Which and quite frankly, if if it made sense, I'd be happy with a $50,000 deductible. I'm not making a claim unless we're making a claim for about $300,000. So that was what I did, and the only stipulations with the insurance, and this is, like I said, going the whole east coast of the U.S., including the Bahamas, but it also includes the Caribbean, with the exception of places that you would expect. Like I can't go to Haiti, to Cuba, Colombia, or Venezuela. And Colombia is the only one out of all those that I kind of would like to go to. I wouldn't be going to Colombia on this trip anyway, so it doesn't really matter at this point. But then when you get to the Med, they said that I can go anywhere except the places, once again, that I have no interest in going to. You know, Libya, Israel, everything east of 35 degrees. So there are parts of Turkey I can't go to, but the other parts of Turkey that I'd want to go to are still covered. And then we can go, and one of the other companies wouldn't let us go to Tunisia or Morocco. And those are two places that I keep reading about that people say that we have to go there. So anyway, all that's covered, so that's all part of the thing too. Something that I'm a little concerned about is insurance. Well, when you check into the European Union, a lot of places want you to get this third-party insurance, is what they call it, which I think we call liability insurance, and they want it for €1 million. And the problem is that our policies usually come with $1 million, but that's not €1 million. So you can't get like $1.2 million. You have to get, the next one would be $2 million. So had to get a bigger insurance plan. But another part of the insurance is health insurance, and I'm a little concerned about this because of the decisions I've made, but we'll figure that out as we go. I don't think it's a deal breaker for us. But there are some countries that I've been reading about that say that when you come in and you check in, they're going to need proof that you have some sort of medical insurance so that you are not a burden on their public medicine, their public healthcare system, and which kind of makes sense to me. You have to deal with the freeloaders in your family. You don't have to deal with the neighbors' freeloaders. So I understand that. That makes sense to me. Because I'm 58 years old, I'm not eligible for Social Security, or I'm not even old enough to start getting into my 401k, and I don't, I'm obviously not eligible for Medicare, and because I never was in the service, I can't use the VA, which is another one that would help. So I had to go out and get some health care, and the program I got is a catastrophic plan. Basically, I pay the first $10,000, and after that they'll pay up to $500,000 wherever I'm at. So I'm hoping that the people in Europe will have no problem with that, but we'll see how that goes, and we'll have to act accordingly. Let's see, what else do we do? I don't know. I think that's all. I probably should have written this down, but this is getting long enough. If you guys have specific questions, let me know. And sorry for not having anything else other than me just talking. But like I say, somebody asked questions about what we're doing for preparing the boat and getting, entering the. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to tell you. So we're supposed to get this new thing. It's EDIS or something like that. It's EDIAS, I think, and it's basically a electronic visa waiver that you can get as North Americans. We can get for Europe, and you pay €7 and it lasts for 3 years, and it basically says, hey, this is Tim, he's a good guy, I might check in Portugal, the Azores, and I might check out in Greece when I go over to Turkey. And so they know that if I'm in Spain and they run my record, that they say, oh look, he's in the system, he's okay. Well, they've been threatening bringing that out for years, and it was supposed to definitely be done by this year, and I went to go sign up for it, and it allows me to sign up for updates. It won't allow me to actually spend €7 and get it for me and Chrysalida. So So we're not. So who knows? I guess we don't do that yet. So, but hopefully they don't change it by the time we get over there. But that's one thing. And then the biggest question that you guys have probably been waiting for, those that are in the know, is the whole Schengen thing. And the Schengen region is area. It's not just the EU, but it's an area within Europe and a lot of Mediterranean countries that allow you to go basically like in the US, where we go from state to state. There's no checks or anything. You just drive from state to state. So if you started, like, say, in Spain, the Schengen visa, you could drive a car all the way over to Italy or Greece, and you wouldn't have to check in or out, passport control and all that, because it's all one thing. That makes that wonderfully easy. The bad thing is that for those of us that are in North America and first world countries, they usually don't have a visa requirement. They do say that you can spend 90 out of 180 days in the Schengen zone. And it's not like you can step out and then step back in, the clock resets. No, in 180 days, anywhere in there you can get 90 days. But if I spend all 90 days in the Schengen zone, then I'd have to spend an additional 90 days out of it, so that the total will be 180, then come back in and start my rolling 180 again. So that makes it very difficult, because I'm hoping to spend about 6 months in the Med, and that only gives me 3 months to do that. And so people call it the Schengen shuffle, where you have to go from country to country, checking in and checking out, and the clock's always ticking. And that's something that I've really been worried about. And something that I kind of going to give a shout out to. There's a couple, I think she's from Australia and he's from New Zealand, sailing Helios, and they've made a couple videos about this where they figured out a way around the Schengen shuffle, and I'm banking on that it works. They found an Italian ship agent that met them and helped them out with this. I made contact with this agent, and it looks as though, fingers crossed, that everything's going to work. By the time we get up to Italy, or before we get to Italy, when we come out of France, we'll actually go and meet this person in Monaco. They have to rent a slip for us to verify that we are in Monaco, and then they take us and they check us out of the Schengen zone, out of the European Union, and then they check us back in as a yacht in transit. Now, by doing this, we can't spend the night ashore anywhere. We would be illegal if we did that. But we can go everywhere and do everything that we need to do, and we can go shopping and see the sights and do all that. We just have to be back on the boat, and back on the boat's all that I really want to do anyway. So I'm really hoping that it's going to work. And then there's a whole taxing issue too, and that's that the boat has 18 months that it can stay in the European Union before you have to pay VAT, or the about 30% of the value of the boat. So that's not going to be an issue for us anyway, because by Christmas we're going to be out anyway. So that's how we're dealing with it. Anyway, I hope you guys like these videos. If there's questions that you have, let me know. I know this isn't sailing. In fact, it's on a tugboat while we're at anchor here, so I don't know if you're going to like it or not. But anyway, just as sailing Helios really hooked me up with some good information, I'm hoping that at least one of you that might be doing this in the future or thinking about it has gained something from what we've done as well. And one other thing, even though it's going to be relatively warm water, and even though they take up a lot of space, just so you know, we're going over with 4 Gumby suits. So those are the immersion suits, and we have to train with those on the boat, and that's just the tugboat, the professional mariner and me coming out. I don't think that we have to get in, we have to do SDCW training, and we have to get in life rafts from pools all the time. And I can tell you that I don't want to be in a life raft. Number one, I don't want to lose the boat. Number two, I don't want to be in a life raft, but I certainly don't want to be in a life raft without a Gumby suit. I want a Gumby suit on, and they suck because they take up a lot of space. But not that expensive, seeing that you could live in one of those for a few days if you had to. And by the way, if you get anything on your boat, if you're going anywhere where you can't see land, before you get a life raft, before you get anything, get an E-perp. A lot of you guys have E-perps. Make sure that it's Number one, registered to you with your contact people that when the EPIRB goes off, they don't just send the cavalry out. They make a lot of phone calls, and it's all the information that you put down there. So if you don't have the right phone numbers for the right people to call, so for an example, if my EPIRB went off, they're not going to call me because I'm out in the middle of the ocean. They're going to call the first person, what happens to be my brother. And my brother's going to say, yep, I talked to him this morning. They're totally fine. I don't know. I'm going to try to make contact with them again. And then it will have a boat phone number and all that so that hopefully they can call you as well. But if you have a problem, they're going to call and see what your last conditions were and all that. So make sure that your EPIRB information is not only registered but up to date, and that's something that you need to redo periodically, as well as make sure your battery's good, and if you have a hydrostatic release, you gotta have that good and all that sort of stuff. EPIRB is not like it was. I keep saying I'm going to end the video, but I keep remembering things I want to talk to you about. There are 1,000 sailing videos with everybody that's ready to go sailing, and they're ready to get their ditch bag. They can't wait to get their ditch bag. And by the time they're done, they've got a steamer trunk full of stuff. And they're thinking about everything because it's so fun to think about being stranded on a desert island somewhere. You know what? It's not fun. The first thing you need to do is to make sure that you never have to use your ditch bag. Second of all, when you start to get ready to ditch, if you have to go down below to get your ditch bag, you're probably not going to get it. It's probably going to be time to go, or you're already in the water at that point. The ditch bag is the dumbest thing I can tell you. And now, those of you that have built a ditch bag and said, I put gallons of water in there, and I put flares, and I put a radio in there, and I've seen videos of people saying, we have our copies of our passport and our banking stuff and all the stuff in our ditch bag. Believe me, if you have to ditch, none of that stuff matters. It really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you stay alive, and that involves not getting pulled down in the boat. And if you go down below to get your ditch bag, you're increasing the odds of that happening. Plus, if you have a EPIRB, these are not the EPIRBs of yesteryear, where you'd pull the EPIRB and 30, days later something would happen, and a plane might fly over. The 406 EPIRBs are very different. You pull that thing, and things start to happen right away. The SAR people, they're going to start getting your information almost immediately, and they don't just get it. It also comes with the 406 EPIRBs have a GPS in them, so it gives you a position, it gives them everything. Everything they need to know is right there. So even on the tugboats, I tell everyone, look, when we go to jump in the life raft, the only thing I want in your hand is that EPIRB. That's what we say, and I say that on the sailboat as well. Only thing that we care about is getting us safely into the life raft, and I have a couple of videos about how when it inflates and how to get in, things to watch out for, and not to be scared when it blows off, because they do blow off and all this. I have other videos. If you want, if you can't find them, let me know, and I'll in the comments, and I'll send you a link. But if you go in the life raft with the EPIRB, you're going to get found, and in the life raft, you're going to have water, you're going to have food, you're going to have flares, you're going to have all that sort of stuff. But if you have the EPIRB, that's all you really need. And if you have this fun ditch bag that you put I put a first aid kit in there, and I put this in here, and I put that in there. I put a thing of cards in there so we can play games and all that. That's not going to help you if you die going to get your ditch bag. And every pound that you add to your ditch bag means that it's bigger and it's heavier, and you're not going to want to have it at your feet ready to deploy. You're going to have it stuffed in underneath the settee somewhere, and when the boat's sunk, you're never going to go down there and get it. So don't do that. Get your EPIRB. If you don't have your EPIRB outside, I have mine right inside the companionway, so you don't have to go down the ladder. You can literally stand at the companionway, reach down and snap it off, and bring it with you. That's that. That's my rant. All right, so I've gone way too long. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Look, if you're planning on doing a big crossing, let me know in the comments. Where are you going? What are you doing? And if you've learned anything, that's awesome. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. It really helps us out. And if you want to be a legend, join us on Patreon. Our patrons get, the stuff everybody gets, free. Everybody that's a patron, free. You don't have to watch ads, and you get early release and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, take care, be safe, and as always, I'll see you guys on the one.